Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission wants to introduce a Deferred Prosecution Agreement mechanism, or DPA, which the MACC claims could prevent complex, high-profile corruption cases from being dragged out in court for years at significant cost to taxpayers. However, we have civil society groups who are warning that DPAs send a message that corruption is a negotiable offence for those with means. So joining me on the show to discuss this concern further is Ngeow Chow Ying, who is a practicing lawyer and convener of Projek SAMA. I also have Pushpan Murugiah, who is the CEO of the Centre to Combat Corruption and Cronyism, better known as C4 Centre. Welcome both of you to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm curious to learn more about this Deferred Prosecution Agreement, the DPA. What do you think, if I may begin with you, Chow Ying, what problem do you think MACC is trying to fix by proposing DPAs? Is it a significant problem? What was your take?
I think, first of all, DPA is a mechanism where the prosecutions will suspend or delay the prosecution process in court, but with an agreement with the accused persons on the terms that they need to satisfy.
Okay.
So mostly it was used on the justifications, I would say, for this DPA is to, like you said earlier, save a lot of resources and court time. A lot of time, the accused will want to pay the fine. It will encourage corporations to self-report. So these are really the justifications for DPA mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
It was introduced in the UK, it was introduced in the US. I think Singapore is also pushing it. But we, of course, do have some concern about whether it is suitable or is it time for Malaysia to implement DPA. Okay.
Just to clarify, so DPAs typically abroad, what kind of cases are they applied to? Is it when the MACC looks at corruption cases, right?
Yes, it's actually mostly corruption cases. Okay. Some anti-competition law as well, applicable to mostly corporations, not individual.
Okay, and when you say, so it's suspend or delay with terms, so it's likely a fine?
Yes, so the prosecutions will do investigations once they found that there is sufficient evidence to charge, but they will charge them, but before it goes to the court for the whole proceeding, courting of witnesses and everything, they will negotiate for a deferred process. Oh. So this proceeding will be deferred later. During this period of time, you have to comply with certain conditions in the agreement.
Does that mean it will eventually go to court?
So if you did not comply with the DPA terms, it can eventually go to court. But if you comply, then the prosecutions can actually withdraw the case.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's a private negotiation.
Okay.
It's a term between the accused persons and the prosecutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pushpan, talk to me about your concerns.
So I think the concern here is going back to the first question in terms of what MACC wanted. But we need to make a distinction there. There was a call by Azam Baki to actually extend it to individuals, right? So we need to first demark that positioning because in the first place, DPA is designed specifically for corporations, which is designed, as you said, to actually reduce the backlogs and making it more faster because corporate crime is complicit where you have so many layering involved, you have cross-border transactions, so it's extremely difficult to actually go to court. It takes a long time. So the rationale is let's cut it short. We know you are guilty. These are the terms and conditions. You have to admit guilt. You have to pay fines. Let's settle that this way. If you default, we go after you. But when you extend it to individual, I don't see where is the justification or the rationale to actually do it because you already have AMLA, which has got compoundable and fine offences. Then you have non-conviction for feature as well, which are also trying to get back assets. So why would you want to use a DPA mechanism which is designed specifically for corporations to extend to individual when you have other mechanisms. So
Okay.
that's our biggest concern. in that sense.
So that's a really great distinction to make. So DPAs were designed for corporations, and now MACC wants to propose extend it for individuals. Let's talk about what risks first, and then we'll talk about the justifications later. What risks arise if prosecutorial discretion is extended to individuals suspected of corruption? Let's ask the lawyer.
So I think coming back to the questions, just now as I say, this is not like a mechanism that we totally disagree. I think there are many countries that use these mechanisms to, that there are advantage to it. But my concern is really, is it suitable at this moment of time in Malaysia? I will point out three things. One is that we are already struggling so much with good governance and accountability issues, especially the accountability issues. We want the governments, which the rakyat actually elected and put them there, to be accountable of what decisions that they have made, to be accountable to the decisions they have made. And we also want politicians who are elected, again, representative, to face the law if they have committed an offence. But at the moment, I think there is a big issues of accountability here in Malaysia. Secondly, I think that goes to perceptions of double standard. Now, Projek SAMA conducted an ENIC survey, ENIC Relations Survey in 2024, 2 years ago. And one of the questions we asked is whether do you think that Malaysia governments treated everybody equally? The underlying question is whether there is a double standard. And more than half of the respondents said that the government did not treat everybody equally. And interestingly, the percentage of the reason why they think it's not treated equally is because from a lens of a class instead of communal, which means that they think that government did not treat everyone equally because the rich and the powerful will get advantage than us.
That's the dua darjah, right?
Exactly. Yes. Instead of like because of the skin color. So if DPA is implemented, it actually double down that perceptions that rich and powerful people can pay, negotiate private agreements to avoid accountability.
It just clicked to me that Projek SAMA, equality and sameness. What a wonderful survey to do.
Thank you.
for Projek SAMA. It's befitting the name. Pushpan, when we think about the rationale for MACC proposing this, they say, okay, we want to cut down the lengthy trials. We want to prioritize financial recovery. So, they're paying the fines, so that means we get some money back. Is that adequate enough justification?
No, I think we have to, again, be very clear. The function of MACC. MACC works as an enforcement agency. It is not a debt collector or a collection center. So I think the priority is they have to go after criminals to ensure justice is delivered, and the mechanisms is there. And if you don't do that by just saying, okay, I caught you, I don't want to go after you, but you pay a fine, you get off scot-free, I think goes back to your point. The equality of law is missing. A person steals sardine and a rice bag has to go to jail, but the bigger crime that you make, the larger amount of corruption that you do, you have a way out of it. And again, this is where I think if you look at all the DNAs, the NFAs, it gives a very, very negative perception where justice is not equally applied. And I think that is not good in the long term for our judicial system as a justice system. And that's where I think that logic of MACC saying, okay, I'll get some money back at least, which you already have other mechanisms, should not apply in DPAs for individuals in this sense.
And I want to add on that, if we have this DPA, where is the deterrence of high crime like corruption? People will think that, it's okay, I can just sign the agreement, pay my way out.
I can negotiate the outcome.
I can negotiate the outcome. So where is the deterrent? Where is the accountability that we are so, important for our democracy?
I also want to quickly add, we need to also see the framework. DPA has a very stringent framework.
What do you mean?
For example, in order to qualify for DPA, if you use the UK example, there's 2 tests you have to qualify. One is you need to ensure that whatever that you collected, the information and the evidence is sufficient enough to get a conviction. That's the first test. Second thing, you need to ensure that there is public interest element.
Okay.
Because DPA plays a very strong issue there because, for example, Boeing and Siemens, right? If you shut them down, they have operations around the world, thousands of employees. They are not complicit, but they get affected, you shut it down. So those are rationale that rationale why you need to DPA. And the terms and conditions. One of the main terms that we must insist on, which really should be applied, is the admission of guilt. That's the first criteria. You have to admit that you did something wrong, something is wrong. Admit, now I'm going to make remedial actions and I'm going to pay you a fine. So the whole discussion about using this mechanism just to get a fine and get away with it doesn't work. It's not even in the context of DPA.
The admission of guilt is so important,
Yes,
isn't it? The
exactly.
recognition. Can I just come back very quickly to something you said, deterrence. Currently, are our laws enforcement enough of a deterrence without having this DPA hanging over us?
Well, I know recently we also released a report. You know, the title of the report is "Do Politicians Still Get Away with Corruptions After 2018?" So we have studied corruptions, criminal breach of trust, and also money laundering charges on elected representative after 2018. So it's elected representative doesn't cover unelected officials or related persons.
Okay. So how many people were you looking
21
at?
persons.
21?
There are 28 charges. And the result of this report is that 9 of the cases is still ongoing in the court, so we will not comment on that. 19 of the cases has been concluded with either DNAA or total acquittal or convictions. So there are 4 cases that have resulted in convictions in the High Court, 1 appeal which turned around, become acquittal, 2 conviction is still ongoing in the Federal Court, but there's only 1 case that has sustained the conviction guilty from the High Court, Court of Appeal to the Federal Court. There's only 1 case.
Out of the
4 convictions.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And the rest of it is withdrawal by the prosecution mid-trial or abandon of appeal, acquittal appeal. The prosecution abandoned the appeal after they have filed the appeal. And there are 2 cases that the prosecution has delayed for so long that there's no choice but the court uses interim power to grant a DNAA.
The prosecution delays?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think this report goes to show we want to see what happened
Right.
to all the corruption, CCM, corruption, criminal breach of trust, and money laundering cases that have gone through the court process.
Right.
So you can see there's only 1 case that actually sustained all the way to the federal
It's like what
court.
Pushpan said, right? When you said, the public perception, I think this study is so important
Yes.
because then you're tracking it. There's
Issues,
data.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
So maybe I can just add a little bit. One of the concerns that C4 has always been saying is the MACC Act was established in 2009. So it's almost 10 over years already. There has not been any review of the whole law. And one of the problems we feel that there is an issue to solve is the fact that MACC requirements, section 16, 17, 18, 23, it is very narrowly interpreted in the terms of, it normally leads towards the issue of gratification in terms of bribery issues. Whereas Malaysians corruption, whatever you put it that way, but it's a very sophisticated way of doing corruption. It involves ecosystem, government apparatus, control of GLCs. So it's so difficult and sophisticated and opaque that the adequacy of MACC is suspect. So whether you actually can capture all these people without a political donation act is extremely difficult because of the shortcomings of the extension of the act itself.
Is that what you would propose?
Yes.
If not a DPA?
No, our proposal, yes, definitely one of the reforms is to reform the MACC Act, ensure that it's updated, it covers enablers of corruption, different aspects of corruption, because corruption has many kinds of manifestations. So each country has its own peculiarity. We have our own one. So we need to find ways to capture the loopholes.
What are the peculiarities? So you alluded to just now a little bit that it's a very complex way.
Yes.
Corruption happens in
Yes.
Malaysia in a very complex way. Does that make it very difficult then to prosecute? And if that's the case, how do we get over that hurdle?
Yeah, I think one way is basically you have, first of all, there are a few elements. That goes into the issue of reform agenda. But I do feel that MACC provisions need to be expanded so that you can cover much broader aspects of corruption. And then, of course, that comes to our reform agenda,
Yeah.
you know, the AGPP, the PP
Yeah.
must also be independent.
Yeah.
And that kind of reform comes into play, where you create an ecosystem that actually disrupts the corrupt ecosystem that we have now.
And the whistleblower
Yeah,
as well.
of
Because
course.
you do need whistleblowers to actually provide information to lead to a convictions, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just how exactly should MACC's provisions be expanded? And I'm asking because in Parliament we have the Yang di-Pertua Agung's
Yeah.
speech opening and focusing a lot on corruption, saying we really need to tackle this. I think there's a special court now that's been
Yep.
fast-tracked to fast-track corruption cases.
Correct.
Are those things going
Yes.
to help?
I think actually C4 and we've been calling for the
Special
court
okay.
for many years.
How would it work and why is
No.
it a good thing?
Okay, it's good because you have specialized people who understand how corrupt practices work, and the multitude of definitions comes with it. So they are able to see the nuances, not necessarily the direct connections, but how everything is linked back to a person getting a benefit or how a party gets a benefit. So they have the skill to dissect the problem. A normal judge who has so many cases to manage, it's difficult for him to focus on corruption issues. So that's why it's a good thing. But even then, I do think the scope of the MACC it still needs to be reviewed to allow a broader scope of interpretation of how corruption actually is and appropriate sanctions on that as well. So I think that's important. Court is definitely a yes for us, but also we need to stock it up with people who are experts, who have knowledge in corrupt issues and how to manage those cases as well.
Just based on your experience, observations, watching out for corruption and cronyism
Okay.
in C4, what have you observed about the way corruption takes place in Malaysia?
Okay, I might get in trouble.
That's okay.
No,
This
I
is the
think-
platform to do it on.
Yeah, I think we are not too worried about the petty corruption, where the bribery, the customs, the police kind of issues. I think that's enough laws. But the problem that we are facing, we're seeing the complicity of political actors, of political institutions, as well as government institutions which are being used as tool to carry out corrupt activity or siphon out natural resources from our country. So again, to explain how it works, I have to draw a diagram for you to visualize and all that. But in essence, it's using the ecosystem to actually extract resources from us.
Okay. There is a state element here that
Yes.
needs to be addressed.
Addressed as well.
Systemic, right?
Yes.
I find that survey or that study that Projek SAMA did quite fascinating. I'm curious to know what your conclusion was from
Yeah.
it.
So if let's say we want to take away with the paper, I think the biggest message is that prosecutorial discretions. We do acknowledge that the prosecutions need to have the discretions to decide whether to take up a case or not, because they are the one who assess the evidence, right? The evidence threshold. But I think the exercise of this discretion is with very little transparency, very few accountability safeguard. When there is big corruption cases involving politicians and involving public interest, and the prosecution decide to either do not charge,
no further action.
no further
Yeah,
actions, or withdraw the charge halfway, or just abandon the appeal without giving a solid reason. I think that is a real question. It's
Yes.
a real issue
You're,
here.
you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
even as a private citizen, and I see this, I wonder, what happened?
Why? Yeah, why?
And then in the vacuum of information, speculation fills.
Exactly.
Yes,
So
yes.
when there is secrecy build suspicious, transparency build trust. I think this is a very important frame that we should really hold on to. And if this secrecy and this non-transparent leads to really eroding of the public trust on the system, on the institutions. Even though there might be one or two cases that is justified, the withdrawal, people don't trust.
Can I ask you from a legal perspective? Is it typical in maybe other countries, or is it good practice to explain why there is a DNAA or a no further action? Or is that sensitive information? Can that information be made public?
Yes, you can. Yes. So in the UK, I think there is a code of conduct.
Even the Crown prosecutors are
exactly, and then they will submit annual reports to the parliaments for debates. Things like that. There's really none of this oversight.
So nothing to stop the AG's chambers from explaining decisions.
Yes, you can't just say it's discretion, At the end of the day, it's public interest and you need to actually explain. But even before that, let's have a prosecution code. What cases fall under DNA, NFAs? You have
Do we not
guidance.
have that?
No, we do not have that.
No,
We have been
these are
calling for that.
discretions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
All right. One of the many things that you're calling for, and I appreciate that you're highlighting this to us. I think for many of us who are outside of the kind of legal system, we're not sure how things are practiced, and we take things, I guess, at face value often. But you're right, public perception is so important. Trust in the judiciary, trust in the system is important. So I want to ask both of you in the time that we have left, what are you hoping for? Because there's been a lot of talk about the lag in institutional reform. So from your perspective, taking all of this into account, what are you hoping, what reform commitments are you hoping to see this year to be prioritized before GE16?
Well, I think the government have announced the 4 reform, which is good reform, but I think we need to go a bit deeper than that. AGPP separation is one really like pushing and on the table.
Yes.
But I think apart from the separations, how the PP, the prosecution, work in the futures is also important. Now, coming back to today's discussions about DNAA, about NFA, a very central role is the prosecution.
Yes.
Because the prosecution decide DNAA, they decide to withdraw. The prosecution also decide whether they actually want to enter into a NDA. So if the prosecution's discretion is not monitored, if there is no safeguard on how he exercises these discretions, this power, it can be
what kind of safeguards are you talking about? Parliamentary oversight?
Parliamentary oversight. I think first of all is the appointment process. Appointment process of the prosecution's team, oversight mechanisms, whether judicial or parliamentary, and transparency. I would really advocate for annual reports, publicize the statistic in a website so that people can see how many DNAA for this kind of cases.
Right.
So that kind of reform is important, and I think also, like for example, this deferred prosecution agreements. It was a talk by the MACC, but we don't see any detail. In the UK, the law have safeguard, have a very heavy judicial oversight. So before the prosecutions negotiate with the accused or the corporations, they have to go to court for an approval of, and the court have to consider whether it's the interest of justice, whether the proposed term is proportionate.
Do we skip that?
So we don't know.
We don't know.
The problem is we don't know. So if the government is really pushing for that, I think we want all this stringent oversight to be in the law.
So it's much more detailed than just a separation of powers between the AG and the PP. That there are nuances to how the public prosecution works.
So even in the UK, you can see each DNA agreement, the DPA agreement.
Oh, wouldn't that be
each
wonderful?
agreement, you can go through all the terms so that there will be no hanky-panky, there's no horse trading, there's no... It's all open.
Is it sensitive information
for
us to share here?
No, I think maybe...
Correct.
Yeah. So let me just add a little bit. I think it's important for the viewers to understand how DPA works in the first place. So you have 4 processes. One is you get caught, and then there's prosecution getting all the evidence done. So you prepare that, you have enough evidence to go to court, then you negotiate with the defendant.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the situation. You must admit guilt, you must pay fines, or you must make reforms, you must ensure that this continues. You go to court, the court says, okay, it's balanced, is right, okay, we approved it.
Yeah.
There is still a process.
Yeah.
You need to monitor that they actually do that activity. So that monitoring process are by independent auditors, institutions will monitor, did that company do what it's supposed to do. And the event, if they don't do the terms and conditions breach, then they can go back to court and charge you again.
Okay.
And one more important point, DPAs, although they don't charge individuals, they go for the corporation, but those individuals who are complicit in doing the criminal act will also normally be charged as an individual. So there's no such thing as getting off the hook. They'll be charged, the corporation is in a way protected, but they charge, they get paid fine. But the individuals who are involved, they will be charged.
So there's still accountability.
Yes. That is the key element that we must have in our DPAs, the accountability.
We don't know
Yes.
the details of this DPA.
We just make sure that they're there.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
I
this
mean,
is-
if they want to push, then we have to make sure all this.
Well, this is
there.
why the voices of civil society
Yeah.
is so important, particularly for this. Thank you so much for educating us about this a bit more and highlighting some of the concerns. I think this was a really important conversation to have with all the nuance and all the details that I think is missing from public discourse. Thank you for both of your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
having us,
Thank
yeah.
you.
That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching and good night.